Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I want to talk to you all about, is it possible to actually infiltrate, we're talking like a Mission Impossible style, where you are coup d'etat-ing or really just taking over a kingdom? Can you actually do that in Call of Dragons? So we are going to discuss that today. It's going to be pretty exciting because it is going to lead into a few other kind of really big topics that revolve around the game. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Number one, if you wanted to actually take over a kingdom, is it really doable? So let's break down the process for how let's say you wanted to migrate somewhere, right? So migration window comes up. You got 3 days to move. You identify a kingdom. We're talking about step one. You identify a kingdom that you and your group want to go to, right? You're most likely going to have to probably try and go to a normal kingdom, right? If you just want to hire, like, let's say you have a lot of players, you have 100, 150, 200 people, it's more ideal for you to go to a normal status kingdom when we're talking about migration activity status, because you have the 350 slots that you can go to. So it's a little bit more viable in that regard when you're thinking about how can I have the highest percentage chance of getting the most amount of players from my current kingdom to a new kingdom, right? It's more ideal to target normal migration status compared to active, because active you only have 200 spots, and crowded it's probably around 100 or less. So really normal kingdoms are the best ones to target. This also can factor into things like reviving or reinvigorating lower activity kingdoms as well, but that's really where you should be looking to target, right? So that's number one. Number two is then you have to go through your migration process of getting the players over into the kingdom. So let's say now you've gone through that, you've got the players over into the kingdom that you want to go into, and you're looking to try and take over. Everyone moves. You're all good to go. But then you get to number three, which is, okay, well, what do you do now? Because this is what you have to understand, is that, and again, I'm probably going to blow some people's minds with this, even though a lot of this is really just straightforward information and data that you can figure out if you play for a little bit and you've gone through at least one migration phase. There are no, and let me preface point three here, because there's a few points I really have to make very clear so you have a good understanding. There are no home kingdoms. If you think about a hostile takeover or a kingdom takeover in the traditional sense, like if we look at a game like Rise of Kingdoms, for example, or maybe Infinity Kingdom, I'm sure there's others as well, they all have home kingdoms. So you could arguably migrate in with a group of people. Then you basically migrate into that home kingdom before you go to a KVK, or if it's in between seasons, and you go in. You basically take over the final zone, you capture the final objective building, and then now you're kind of running as a king-queen, but or even if the game doesn't have that, you're still kind of in that best or final zone or area that you need to be with your players and group, and maybe you're pushing out the others, right? That's kind of how you think of it being ran in the ideal sense. Where you basically have majority control, majority presence over either the most important territory and or the most important objectives. So when we talk about COD, there's none of that, right? You don't have a home kingdom in Call of Dragons, unfortunately. My view on it is that I believe we need to have home kingdoms. However, I want to put a big asterisk here. The amount of time that we should spend in those home kingdoms should be very, very low amounts, right? I'm talking 1 to 2 weeks, probably no more than 2 weeks, I figure, right? If you think about other games, for example, your Rocks or Infinity Kingdom, sometimes, if you're talking about like when their KVK SVSs initially came out, you were sometimes waiting months, right? Anywhere from 1 month if beyond. So to me, I think in COD, because of the way that the healing system and the hospital system works, it is a little bit more favorable to kind of get back into fights quicker, where you don't necessarily need to sit in a home kingdom for that long, right? So that's why, to me, I think 1 to 2 weeks is a fantastic sweet spot where you get enough time to go back to a home kingdom. You can kind of reset, reorganize yourself, do some audits, do some activity checks, do some redistribution of territory if you need to, right? Regardless if it factors in or not. Maybe you're having new players that are coming in and you want to make sure that at least during the time they're in the home kingdom, they're being able to get buffs allocated, so that way they can at least maximize their progression for that period of time that they're going to be there. And again, these are just some of the things that it really allows for you to do, really benefits you in that regard. So, however, then we get to probably the next big point here, right, beyond 3, right, from that kind of prefacing subpoint there of that there is no home kingdoms. You also don't have, or sorry, let me get to the second prefacing, is that you don't have any leaderboards, right? So you have no home kingdom leaderboards, which is a suggestion we put into Call of Dragons as well that we should get added, because it doesn't allow for you on one end to see who are the people that actually came over, right? If you're having migrants that are coming over, or in this case, people that are trying to do takeovers, and you're trying to identify who these people are, or if you're just trying to identify who are the top people because you are the invading group, right? You have no way of knowing on what side of the fence any of these people fall on, because you don't have any way to assess who are the actual people that are in your kingdom, right? The only way that you can do this is if, and I'll give you an example here after I just do a little quickaroo, because I need to make sure that I am staying on Topperoni. Ooh, look at that. Let's do that little side one. Wow, it's really going to make me go get that? Oh, man, you are the best, system. So here we go. So let's say I zoom in. The only way anyone can figure out what home kingdom they're in, or basically the home kingdom that your account or your character is currently in, is you'd have to go to your profile. And you'd have to look, right, where you can see this kingdom or this character / account originated, or is it currently in Kingdom 2, right? And then the division is just kind of where you currently are. This is something I wish that they would just have on a player profile. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I go here to leaderboards and I click on our boy Dozzers. I would love if somewhere, whether it's here at the bottom area or even here along the top, if it said something such as like home kingdom or just the number for the kingdom that they started in, would be absolutely fantastic. And then if there was an option, like say here where it says rankings, right? Let's say this pops up, but before this pops up, there's a tab up here where it says like division rankings, home kingdom rankings, just something super simple. And then that way when you click on it, the drop down is the statistics for that kingdom, for that home kingdom or merge kingdom, right? Or division, if you will. That to me is really what I feel it should be. So there's not only, so you just have more information and there's more transparency. And it also helps you organize in a lot of ways, and I'm sure some unforeseen ways that some people just may not realize yet. But to say all of this, right, we get back to this idea of invading and trying to take over a kingdom, right? So now let's kind of get to point 4, which is, at least I think I covered point 3, and if not, we'll do that in point 4. But if I did, fantastic. Here we go, point 4, is that when you migrate, you get into your kingdom, you're there, you're trying to kind of take over in this sense. You're not really taking over anything. Like, let's be real, right? What are you actually taking over? Because you have to think of it like this. When you get into a division, when you get into a merge KVK, and let's say you come over with your alliance, let's say you come over with 150 people, you get over into that kingdom. But what is there to take? Like, you have to really think about it. What is there to take over, right? There's no home kingdom, so you can't take over any objectives. You are not able to take over any territory because there is no home kingdom, right? Number 3, you're unable to truly identify who is a part of those kingdoms if you're just going into a kingdom and you're not like looking to communicate with people that could be there beforehand, right? Because 1, you have no idea. You have no way to figure out who actually is a part of that kingdom. Why? It's a combination of 1 and 2, right? Because you can't go back to the home kingdom, so you don't have a way to look at who's around the territory or look at leaderboards. But then also number 3 is that when you're migrating somewhere, there's no point of contact, right? Like you notice this in Rock, where if you migrate to a kingdom, you'll see a way to message whoever the current king or queen is, right? You don't have that in COD. So, to me, the migration system is very interesting because it's almost so and again, I say this respectfully, is that it's very rudimentary. right? It's almost as though they just basically said, hey, here, you can just go migrate wherever you want, but you have to think about it. And now let's have the next step, is that when you actually get into your merged division, how are you going to try and take over a kingdom, or how are you going to try and find players to go and attack if you have no idea where they're from, right? Remember, like we talked about, there's no way to figure out by clicking on a profile or through just your own means, right, without having to go and message someone, where you could figure out a kingdom that someone plays in, right? Again, the only way to do that is you'd have to go and message them, or you'd have to know them personally, or have some type of like paper trail of them never saying anything that they've left or migrated out of the kingdom, right? And you just would have to take a guess, so to speak, at that. So in reality, when you get into a new division, right, this could maybe be 0.5, is that you have no way of knowing the players from which kingdoms, from where they're at, unless you knew that information prior to a merged kingdom. Then you also have to think about when future seasons come out, this is only going to be even further diluted, because then you're going to have no way of knowing, really even more so, right, where people are originating from or what their current home kingdom is, unless that information becomes publicly available, right, without you having to go and do all the dirty grind work, the labor-intensive work of asking people individually, then just hoping they tell you the truth if they don't send you a screenshot of their profile. So this is all to say that the idea of taking over a kingdom is very moot, right? It's kind of non-existent at this point. If anything, if you think about it, you're really going somewhere by yourself with a group of people, with your alliance, with multiple alliances, so you could potentially get matched up in different KVK pools, right? That's really the benefit, if you're really thinking about it in the long run, is that you would, like, for example, people in 32 would maybe consider leaving if they don't want to keep getting matched up against 33, 31, maybe 34, right? As an example, right? If that eventually passes and kind of happens, right? Where you start seeing, well, okay, we're just going to put the top 6 or 8 kingdoms in a KVK pool, as an example. You might have an alliance that leaves because maybe they don't want to sit there and just fight those guys over and over again, right? So they wait until they get into a matchmaking pool where they can find a kingdom that has a normal activity status, and they can just try and move as many of their players over there. And then now they're potentially going to get matched in a different pool with different kingdoms, right, for future seasons, where there is a chance that they will not get matched up then, right, against the big dogs, as an example. So these are things to think about. Now, again, that's only if the matchmaking system kind of factors in those MMR ratings based on that. Maybe they'll never pair top kingdoms all in one for kind of a super or mega. Maybe they'll do it one time and then vary and switch. Again, we don't know. We need to see more groups to really kind of figure out what those trends are. But this idea of taking over kingdoms, it's just not really there, right? Now, I guess is the last point to talk about, which is, well, do you really care if you have the ability to take over kingdoms, or do you not care if you do not have the ability to take over kingdoms, right? That's maybe the last point to touch on. So where I kind of fall on that is, part of me likes the idea that you cannot really take over kingdoms. I think there's a nice safety net there from that aspect of it when you think about the overall kingdom and the player base health of that server, where they're not going to be subjected to that type of, not only scrutiny, but that type of kind of unwarranted or lawlessness that could come in, right? Even though, again, they can't really do anything, from everything we've just explained. However, if they added in home kingdoms, yeah, that might be a different story. On the other side of it, my view is pretty simple. To me, I've always viewed migration very easily, where it just needs to be gated. Right, players in those kingdoms need to have the autonomy to decide who they accept and who they deny to let people in. Regardless if you agree with that or not, it is the only way that you can fully guarantee the only way you can have the highest percentage chance to guarantee and or just to eliminate margin of error. Right, which basically means that if you're accepting and denying people, you can vet them, you can interview them, you can go and ask people how they were in their previous kingdom that they played in. Having something like a migration resume card as an example, or migration history card of people who apply to a kingdom, and then you can see what kingdoms did they play in before, how long were they there, what was their power level when they left. Those types of things can really help when it comes to figuring out, are these players right fits for your kingdom. However, also, if you're going to do something like that, you kind of almost need to have a home kingdom, right? For even if it's a short stint, because having a home kingdom really allows for you to feel a sense of community. It allows for you to feel a sense of, oh, these are our people, right? This is our group. This is our kingdom. And you don't really have that right now. If you think about, and again, I'm not going to go off on too much of a tangent here, but if you think about this idea, we'll touch on this later, this idea of community, right? And you've seen this already been brought up from alliances that do not want member capacity limits to be reset from one season to the next, right? One of the reasons why they doubled the member capacity from season 1 to season 2, right? It goes from 40 to 80 for starting alliances. We've spoken out about this where we just feel that member capacities should never be reset, right? Where if you finish a season and you're at 160 players out of 175, you should be at 160 players out of 40 or out of 80, right? Going into the next season. Like, players should not be forced to leave because that affects community. Right? Nobody wants to have to regrind and wait to get back into an alliance, right? Even if they end up joining somewhere else, maybe they don't want to join somewhere else. In most cases, they don't, right? They want to keep playing with their players in the majority of time. So that's such a negative psychological impact to a player when they're coming in and really enjoying a game. So to me, I think that's a big opportunity the game has. But then you have to look at beyond that, which is these things factor into, right, your ability if you're trying to go in. And again, like I said, if you're trying to do something like a takeover of a kingdom and you're thinking about how that's going to factor into the next season where you're going to have to redistribute players, all of these things can really kind of be connected, if you will. But again, I digress. That is really my speech, right? That's my TED Talk on hostile takeovers. And, is it doable? Not really. Is it really even considered a hostile takeover? Not really, because, and the other thing is you have no idea where these players are going to go, right? Think about it. When you go into the next season and you're in that kingdom and you're thinking, oh, we're taking over the kingdom. I mean, you're not, right? I mean, you can view the kingdom as a shell, really, at this point for how the game is set up. And you're just going in there with your alliance and you're just hoping to get matched up differently, right? And then you're going to go and attack people. Because again, if you don't know who's in that kingdom, you could end up attacking people from that home kingdom. You could end up just not attacking anyone from that home kingdom because you guys chose different starting zones. So it is interesting when you think about it. It's sometimes I almost feel like there's parts of the game that contradict each other. And I'm not saying that in some type of ill-intended way, but there are parts of it where you think about you have migration but no home kingdom. You don't have home kingdom leaderboards, but you only have KVK leaderboards, right? You allow for anyone to kind of start wherever they want, and then that has its own form of negative impacts for starting zones and new seasons, right? Because you're basically allowing for people to get crushed, potentially, in their starting zone 1, so they don't have this opportunity to actually play the game to its fullest extent, or at least have that opportunity to do so with something that's more appropriate to scaling, right? One of the things that you would do with that is you would have dedicated starting regions for kingdoms, very similar to what they've done in Rock and Infinity Kingdom. There's a reason, there's method behind the madness. There's a reason why you do this, because you don't want players to be negatively impacted because they're basically getting crushed from that starting zone 1 area, right? So for that first week or so, right, unless they decide that they want to resurge or move starting regions. But that doesn't obviously guarantee that they're going to now all of a sudden be devoid of lawlessness, right? The only thing that really can guarantee that is if you have dedicated starting zones, or I should say have a higher percentage chance of fulfilling that want, is having dedicated starting zones for kingdoms, and then you just allow for the fights to happen in zone 2 or zone 3, etc., or you allow for people to be able to advance in zones. Then you have kind of middle zones where people can fight, and then eventually once you get into zone 3 it opens up, and then you open up zone 2 for everyone, then you go back and open up zone 1 for everyone. In my opinion, I feel that's a more appropriate way to do it. Man, I'm really totally getting off topic right now. This was supposed to be only about hostile takeovers, and now I'm ranting at this point. But anyways, I hope, if anything, you guys enjoyed some of it, right? At least maybe the first 10 or 12 minutes where we were really focused on being on topic. So with that in mind, that I think is going to do it for me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a different viewpoint? I would love to hear on what you feel about hostile takeovers. Do you agree it's just not really a thing? You can't really do it. No point in even saying that it is. Or do you feel like, no, you know what? We actually have gone into a kingdom and we've really felt like we've taken over everything. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. So let me know down there. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.